What up, FTMTelevision? It's Sammy, and this week's topic is Trans Week of Remembrance. I apologize, I'm super sick, but I think this video is really important, and yeah, so I'm going to make it. It might be a little long. Bear with me, I have a lot of good stuff to say. So first off, I want to give a little history lesson. I just recently, for my school, because we had this LGBTQ civil rights exhibit, but it didn't have any trans history. So I just recently did a bunch of research and came up with a trans timeline, and as well as researched some trans people. And yeah, anywho, I want to give a little history and talk about a few things. A lot of people think that the Stonewall riots were the beginning of the queer movements, the revolutions and stuff like that. And I just want to say that an event had happened about 3 years before Stonewall. Some of you may have heard of it, some of you may have not, but the Compton cafeteria riots happened before Stonewall, and basically I'll read what I have written, but basically trans women and drag queens working in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco often took refuge in Gene Compton's an after-hours cafeteria. They would buy coffee and stay for hours, temporarily escaping the troubles of the street. After the owner began harassing them with discriminatory policies, the queens formed an organization named Vanguard to fight for their rights to use the cafeteria. On a hot summer evening, after an unsuccessful picket, the owner summoned the police to evict the queens, and a riot broke out as they fought back. Now, there's a very famous picture of that, of a trans woman in a white fur coat with her fist raised, that came from the Compton cafeteria riots. It was not highly written about or acknowledged, but I think it's really influential. It was the first time that trans and queer people really stood up for themselves, and it was mostly, as trans women and drag queens, mostly street workers and stuff like that. The same thing with the Stonewall riots. People don't like to talk about such people as was it Jim Farrat, who likes to say that he spearheaded the movement and whatnot. Though I have to highly disagree with that, and he's also somewhat of a transphobe. But for those of you who have done your research, you'll know that Sylvia Rivera was the first to throw a brick at police on that historic night, and that the Stonewall riots were started predominantly by trans people, people of color, and street youth, street queer youth, and yeah. So. And, yeah, the, Stonewall riots, yeah, it was after the Stonewall riots started, then a lot of white and middle-class, gay men started getting more involved, starting things like the Gay Liberation Front and stuff like that, which is where Jim Farrat was heavily involved in, and things like that. But yeah, whatnot. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Stonewall riots. Sylvia Rivera, a Latino transgender prostitute no less, which I love sex workers. I think that's completely awesome. Was the first to throw a brick at police that historic evening. The Stonewall Inn was a hustler bar where largely unemployed and underemployed street hustlers and people of color hung out. The riots began around midnight, June 27, 1969, with a routine police raid on an unusually hot and humid night. Cops from the 6th Precinct showed up with paddy wagon, expecting little to no resistance, as was usual in the case of gay bar raids. For reasons that remain unclear, probably because they were just sick of getting messed with, the large crowd gathered outside suddenly turned on the cops. Rioting lasted into a third night, with professional anarchists from the East Village joining in the fight. They broke windows and set cars on fire. Rioting continued in the village sporadically throughout the months of July. I think that's amazing. I think it's amazing when trans people and minorities fight for their rights like that. I think it's really important on underrepresented groups. The person I want to highlight tonight is Martha P. Johnson, who many of you may have never even heard of, who was a trans woman. And along with Sylvia Rivera, I'm going to talk about this group of people who I recently discovered, and I think is just, I saw Cornel West speak tonight, and he had a lot of really amazing things, and that just inspired me. And also I want to say that Sylvia Rivera and Martha P. Johnson highly, highly inspired me, especially as trans women of color. I think it's amazing. Before I get into that, though, I want to say some things to my trans brothers out there. Some of you guys are going to get offended by this, but whatever. I don't really care. We, as trans men, have it a lot better than trans women. And are, like, less likely to get harassed and murdered. And some of you guys may not agree with that, but it's true. Especially trans women of color. The thing that you guys have to remember, that as a trans man, I've been on testosterone less than a year, and I already pass 99.9% of the time. It helps that I'm sick because my voice is like hella fucked up, but the fact is, I pass almost all the time, which is the case with most trans men. Testosterone can give what estrogen cannot take away. And the fact is, a lot of trans women don't get passing privilege like us trans men get. So it is inherently a lot more dangerous for trans women, and a lot more trans women have to go through a lot of feminizing surgeries and different things. I mean, if they can afford it, which, think about it, a lot of people of color and, poverty level people, which trans people make a good majority of, trans people fit that, often either as a person of color or low income. But trans women have it a lot harder than us, and it's disrespectful when we use words like the T word, like tranny, because that has not historically been a word that has been used against us in a hateful way. Because let's face it, most of us pass all the time, especially if you identify with the masculine side of the scale. I mean, I get it if you're like genderqueer and whatnot, but the fact is, even if you're genderqueer and feminine, most of the time you can at least pass for a gay man, and yeah. Like, I know from my own personal experience, I've been on testosterone less than a year, and I'm already stealth in one of my college classes, and yeah. Testosterone can give what estrogen cannot take away. So with that, we have it a lot easier, especially once we've been on hormones. I have trans women friends who have been on hormones years and years and years longer than me, and they still don't come anywhere near passing, and it sucks to see the way that they're looked at compared to me, because people can spot them out. People can spot them as being trans, and they can't do that with me. Anywho, yeah, so that's my little spiel. Trans women have it a lot harder, especially trans women of color, who experience more violence than anyone else. So, back to this. Martha P. Johnson, who is African American, and Sylvia Rivera, who's Latin American, a Latino transgender prostitute, and I think Marsha P. Johnson was also a prostitute. Anyway, they were both Stonewall veterans, by the way, but they founded this organization, or founded a group. I can't really say it was an organization, but they founded this group called Street Transvestites Action Revolutionaries. They founded it, and pretty much Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries fought for the rights of homeless drag queens and runaways. A liberationist effort, Star was in part a response to feeling that the more marginalized elements of the queer movement were being left behind by the increasingly reform-oriented gay activist alliance. Rivera and Johnson ran a house where trans women who were living on the streets could go and eat and find shelter. It was an amazing organization. I did a lot more reading about it, and yeah, it's like pretty cool. I really like how what was I gonna say? I'm sick. I'm sorry. But anyways, I want to highlight Martha P. Johnson, who was presumably murdered. The police want to say it was a suicide, but people that knew her knew she wasn't suicidal. And in 1992, her body was found floating in the Hudson River. And her friends and supporters tried to get the police to investigate, and it was unsuccessful, as is the case with a lot of trans murders. The police don't want to investigate them and stuff like that. But yeah, Martha P. Johnson. I really love it. It talks about how in court the judge asked Martha what does the P stand for, and she says, "Pay it no mind," and that phrase became her trademark. I find it really sad that someone as revolutionary as her ended up getting murdered. I feel like a lot of revolutionary people end up being killed, and so many of our voice are like I don't feel like we have a lot of like older trans people, because a lot of them, I feel like the fear of getting hurt sends people either into hiding, or the people that are really outspoken tend to get killed, which is like really fucked up and sad. Yeah, I was talking with somebody a little bit ago, and we were talking about how there are no older it was when I went and saw Han Bin, who's like a genderqueer violinist, and they were talking about how we've lost so many of our voices, you know, through the AIDS epidemic, through murders, through violence, through assimilation, and it's like really, really sad. But yeah, it makes me really sad to know that this amazing revolutionary woman is like no longer, you know, and I think of how many young people who could grow up and have such a strong voice are like not here today. The last thing I want to do in this video is read the last part of this article I found about the STAR, the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. And it says, "I met, in quotations, Black Panther Party leader Huey Newton at the People's Revolutionary Convention in Philadelphia in 1971. Huey decided we were part of the revolution, that we were revolutionary people. Rivera stressed, I was a radical, a revolutionist. I am still a revolutionist. I'm glad I was in the Stonewall riot. I remember when someone threw a Molotov cocktail, I thought, my God, the revolution is here. The revolution is finally here. I always believed that we would have a fight back. I just knew that we would fight back. I just didn't know it would be that night. I'm proud of myself as being there that night. If I had lost that moment, I would have been kind of hurt, because that's when I saw the world change for me and my people. Of course, we still got a long way ahead of us. And I encourage you, all of you guys out there who are watching this video, to think about what it means to be a human being. Not just a trans person, but a human being. And I encourage each and every single one of you guys to think what you could do for your brothers and sisters, and how you can stand up and find your voice, and find your place within this movement, because we have a long way to go. And it's not right to see so many of our young sisters of color, our young brothers dying and losing what they could become. So I encourage you guys all to think about that, and think about what you could do to help make this world a little bit better. Alright, I'll see you guys later. Bye.